Hi, so welcome to Dan Talks Boxing. Today I have someone I've got to know very well over the last few years. He's one of the best athletes in the world in his chosen field. He is a five-time world champion football freestyler, an eight-time UK champion, and now he is delving into the world of fighting, an undefeated mixed martial artist who I've been lucky enough to train in the boxing world over the last year and a half. Andrew Henderson, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure, mate. Always good to chat with you, and congrats on launching this podcast as well.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Well, you have actually been a big inspiration for me to start doing this kind of stuff. So thank you for the inspiration. Um,
Wow.
Firstly, I wanted to go back to the very beginning with yourself. Now, I know I know from yourself that freestyle wasn't necessarily something you started off doing when you were young. You were more into table tennis and rugby, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so I played loads of different sports. I pretty much just that's all I loved was sport. So I just tried everything. And yeah, I didn't start freestyle till I was around about 14, 15 years old. So I started quite late. Most athletes, if they become that level in a sport like world champion or national standard, they start from a really young age. So to start at that age, a lot of people did doubt me and say like, yeah, you'll never be one of the best, especially because of the age I started. So prove them wrong. Ha.
No, that's incredible, man. I mean, in regards to your earlier life, playing the rugby and the table tennis, how did you get into a sport that's it's quite niche football freestyle? I mean, I love football. Football was one of the biggest things in my life growing up, but I was never really the most skillful. You can kind of do around the world, but coming from a place like Cornwall as well, where you wouldn't necessarily imagine the football freestyle scene to be huge there. Who influenced you to get into football freestyle, and how did you kind of get into it?
Yeah, I saw some videos online actually. I just saw some guys doing some crazy skills. There was a guy called Sofiane Touzani. He's like a pioneer of freestyle. I saw him do some skills online, and that got me like thinking like, is this fake or is it real? Because I didn't see any of the pro players do it. And then I saw an advert of Brazilian Ronaldo doing some skills, which I later on found out that it wasn't even him. It was a body double for him, who's now a friend of mine, which is quite funny. Um, so I just saw these skills and I thought, wow, that's amazing. I was very crafty with the ball in terms of dribbling around opponents, but I didn't have any sort of aerial skills like around the world or anything like that. There are a few guys in my school doing it, like the basic tricks. So we all kind of met up during break times and practice our skills. And I was probably the worst out of all of the guys,
Mm.
but I stuck with it the most. And after a few months, I started to improve, and I was always quite a good athlete, so that kind of took over in the end. But the first, yeah, 5, 6 months, I couldn't really find it. It took ages to learn the basic techniques, and then progressed pretty quick after that.
Yeah, I mean that's fascinating because going through the world of boxing as I have over the last 12 years, I can really relate into regards to like, you know, for me, boxing was kind of like a puzzle that I was trying to solve, and there were these guys that would come into the gym and they would just be, phenomenal talents that would get it straight away. But that art of perseverance, it's really key to your success because you'll see talented guys kind of come on the scene and really impress. And then they just won't either have the discipline, the drive, or the dedication to stay with it. I think that perseverance is a huge part of success.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for boxing as well as freestyle, like one of the things that you can progress a lot in is just by being alone and training. I think people really they think that they need someone else to show them the way or they need a coach or all that sort of thing. All those things are great, but you can do so much by yourself. And if you don't put in those hours by yourself, I don't think you're going to make it like just by being coached. I think you need to put in the hours by yourself. And with freestyle, there weren't any coaches, so I had to figure it all out by myself. I had to learn these skills by myself, and a lot of it was trial and error and just practicing different moves and studying tape and just building up the skills. Which actually now when I do martial arts, I find it's almost easier to learn because people who are experts in the field like yourself and other guys, they're they're passing on their knowledge and their techniques to me, and they're correcting things, so I don't have to do that kind of path of discovery as much myself, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I mean that is always nice, and I guess in a sense, we're in the world of freestyle. What makes you stand out from other people is what makes you unique. You know, your own tricks. I mean, the way you kind of develop your own style, and I think to a sense, it's kind of the same with that in boxing. I mean, in boxing, I guess the differences are that if you do make a technical mistake, you will get caught. There's that danger. However, you look at some of the most unique fighters in history. I use Sergio Martinez, for instance, a footballer and a cyclist who never really started boxing until his 20s. He just had this unique style that no one could deal with. And I think a lot of that comes from his own kind of initiative, the way he was able to use his prior athleticism to create this crazy style. And I've found personally from myself, I've learned so much more about boxing kind of 9 years in, just where I started making videos and just watching loads of boxers, and subconsciously your own kind of little tricks come into play, and you just start pulling off stuff where you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Would you find that was the same in freestyle? You would just be able to, things would just click into place from all that practice?
100%, 100%. Like sometimes I would go out and I'd be trying some moves and they would seem impossible, and then I'd train them every day, hours and hours and hours, and I still think they're impossible. And I'm like, man, I might not ever be able to do this. And then a few months later, without training them, just kind of put that on the back burner for a bit, train other things. I come back, I try the move, and I get it straight away. And I'm like, damn, just took a while for my mind and my body to connect on it. And I definitely feel that with martial arts as well. But because I know it and I've had that experience, and I'm sure it's the same with you over the years of going through the process of thinking something's not possible, or I can't move my body in a certain way, or I can't do that in a real situation, to it just clicking and working like it's automatic. Once you know that that's a possibility, you have more hope with everything else every time you try something. And yeah, like you said, I do think it's about having like an open mind to different techniques, like not like, oh, that'll never work. It's like, yeah, it might work, but okay, there's all these factors. So, don't get carried away, but sometimes just allow yourself to just have an open mind and try things. Um, and I'm finding that a bit with martial arts now. I just try things sometimes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, if you can do something that makes you unique and stand out and it works, then people will usually struggle to work it out. I wanted to move on to 2008. Now, you had this pretty serious injury playing rugby
Yeah.
where, I mean, you broke your leg, and I believe you were told that you may never even walk again. So
Yeah.
to think that you've had this athletic career where you're doing all kinds of mad tricks. Tell me about that. How did that come about? How did that impact you? And how did you overcome that, not just physically, but psychologically?
Yeah, I broke it bad, man. I did it I did it properly, and I got a metal plate 9 screws in there now as well. And yeah, it was tough, man, because like I said, sport was the only thing that I was really good at and I focused on. When I got told that, like, that those days were gone, it was like, okay, well, that's all I know. So that
Yeah.
sucks. Then when I started recovering, and freestyle definitely helped me recover. And at the time, I wasn't really taking freestyle seriously. It was just one of like the 5, 6 sports that I was playing. And but it helped me recover because even with my ligament cast, I was balancing the ball on my head, side of my head, sitting down and stuff like that. So when I started walking again, I started trying to juggle the football, built it up, and yeah, went from there. So it was tough mentally, but I definitely think overcoming that adversity made me a lot stronger. I think I was already pretty mentally determined, but going through that was like, okay, well, you know that it can all be taken from you, and
Mm.
just having that feeling of like, I really thought I would never play any sport again, or maybe even walk again, and like I didn't give up, but at the same time, it was like, wow, everything can just go. You can have
Yeah.
one training session, something happens, and that's it. So that made me like every day try and make the most of progression and look for progression in other ways. So like I progressed so much, even with my leg broken, like with the head trick sitting down, with like even sit down tricks with my opposite foot, like even just thinking about it. And then when I got back to moving around again, started walking again, building up my fitness, I was very disciplined with the physio. I came back and I made a really good recovery. And then I became national champion for the first time about a year and a half after the accident.
Wow,
So
pretty
the
quick.
injuries. So yeah, and then I just went on a tear, started mashing everyone up, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
it was all from yeah, just like deciding every day I'm going to get the best out of myself every single day. So that was a big turning point.
Sometimes injuries can be like a blessing. I think it's the art of consistency. Just, like, of course, if you have a severe injury and you need to rest, I think that's extremely important. But if you can work around it, like you say, you've got this cast on your leg, yet you're still juggling the ball on your head. And those are tricks that would probably, you would have memorized and gotten so good at during that time period that you were able to use in the big world finals that you would go on to use. I find, for instance, at times where fighters, myself even, have broken one of my hands, and you could just run on the treadmill, keep fit, but if you can just use your other hand, you
Yeah,
end up developing that so much, and it becomes a knockout punch in the future. So I do think it's injuries aren't always the be all and end all. That psychological, that mentality you can approach it with can really benefit you. But I wanted to move on to like,
definitely.
sorry, I wanted to move on to making a career out of a sport that's like I say, is pretty niche. I mean, you wouldn't really, I wouldn't really know the career path you can take with freestyle. So how do you develop? I mean, are there tournaments you enter in, and also how do you cope financially whilst devoting all of this time to your training, doing these tournaments, and developing as a freestyle footballer?
Yeah, freestyle's not like a mainstream sport, but actually when I started, I didn't know you could make a living from it. I just did it because I like doing tricks and I like the fact that I could express myself fully and be creative, learn new tricks, and I just thought it was really fun. So um, when I first started, it was about that. Then I did get a few performances, even sort of around the time I had my injury, just before my injury. But it was local stuff. Like I'm talking going into schools, doing like assemblies and doing some small events at football grounds and halftime shows, things like that. And then after I won the UK champs when I was 17, I got a manager and started traveling to different countries, performing at corporate events, taking my skills around the world. And then after that, building things up, I was traveling, doing perform. It was mainly performance based. So like a dancer does a show on a stage, a freestyler could do a show to music with a like a set routine, that sort of style. And then it built up from there. And with the rise of social media as well, I started doing TV adverts, even choreographing skills for football players, and then doing brand deals on social media over the recent years and building that up to sort of representing I manage other freestylers as well and that sort of thing. So yeah, man, just progressed from that and winning titles definitely helped, but the marketing of freestyle and yourself is more like that's a separate thing. And I know you know that because I think, last year or so you've started doing even less than that. Like you've progressed so quickly, grown a big following on TikTok and Instagram and it's different. It's a different thing. Having those credentials, being a professional boxer and a successful one, undefeated, they're going to help and they're going to make you credible.
Mm.
But that means nothing if you don't do the groundwork, the marketing and the constant, consistent posts and trying to build it up. So building up social media following. Actually, for me, it wasn't about that at the start. I wasn't really trying to build it. It just went with me traveling and Instagram becoming a thing. I was just share videos of skills in different countries just because I did. It wasn't like anything about growing a following, but then it grew quite quickly. And when I worked with some of the best players like Messi and Ronaldo, guys like that, then obviously people are going to start taking interest as well and competing in world championships and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, one of the things I've been so impressed with you is obviously, you know, that you see the skills, but the business mind, the way you're able to market yourself, some of the brand deals and the people you've been able to work with has just purely come from your own initiative, getting yourself out there and marketing yourself in a certain way. And it is funny, you touch upon, you know, like what I've been doing this last year in regards to building up the social media side of things. And in regard, I've actually slowed down with the boxing because this has it's given me new opportunities. And I mean, I would say within the first sort of 10 years as a boxer, no one really paid me the attention that they did as soon as I started making videos. It really is. For anyone coming up in any kind of field, but especially sports and individual sport, it really is all about how you market yourself. And with the opportunities of social media nowadays, the world is literally in your hands.
Yeah, it's a shame in many ways, and it's a great thing in many ways. It's so good because you can reach out to more people, you can inspire loads of people, whether it's to start boxing, freestyle, or anything else, even just to be fit and active, to pursue something, you know, overcome adversity, whatever it is. There's an audience there, and you're reaching out to loads of people that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to. But then it's also, I think it's a shame sometimes because like it suits certain personality types, and the ones that tend to do really well on social media are like the ones that are really fame hungry and they try and get attention. Like, look at me, look at me, look at me. You know, like Jake Pauls and guys like that. Like, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but they wanted to be famous, like
Mm.
clearly. And because they wanted it so much, there's nothing wrong with that, but because they want it, they'll get it eventually, and they're just trying to push themselves out there and be famous. But if you're just doing something because you love it, like you want to be a boxer, you want to be a freestyler, whatever it is, you do it because you love it. You're not going to be as focused on trying to build up social media and do all that unless your personality suits it as well, I think. Unless you're thinking just from a business standpoint, and you have to be so like there'll be so many boxers that won't be that no one has ever heard of that are knocking on the door as one of the top in the world even, and no one gives them any credit, no one even knows them, and they're not making any money or anything like that. And then there'll be guys who suck, who like everyone knows. And it's the same in freestyle. You have some guys in freestyle that suck, you know, like they
Yeah.
just but they market themselves well, and they want to be famous, you know, so they get there because that's their goal. And it's a shame because there are a lot of great freestylers that I've seen who are some of the best in the world, but they can't even make a living from it. And then you get guys that have got like not really any decent skill level, but they're making a killing from it. And yeah, that's one of the downsides from it. I'd say like it'd be good to get like I don't know less corruption in the
Yeah.
industry.
I think that's just professional sports, you know. Like what I mean,
100%.
when you convert from an amateur to, like you say, where you're purely just doing a sport because you enjoy it, and you go over to that professional side of it, and it's just, you know, you see lots of corruption. You realize how much of a business professional sports are. Some more than others. I mean, boxing is one of the worst. It's like the wild west of professional sports because there's not really any major governing bodies that are keeping control of these things. And yeah, I do think that's true. And I do think you touch on a good point where people can just find fame quickly now. You know, we will touch on the influencer boxing scene a little bit later, but I think in some ways it's a double-edged sword because you have guys like yourself and other guys that are trained that are approaching this properly with the right mindset and doing all of the training to get into it. And it's a great opportunity because I feel like you guys are bringing in a whole new audience and inspiring so many people and showing what can be done at a good level. But then you also get some people who are just jumping on the opportunity and not taking it seriously and just going in for the quick, you know, the quick fame. And ultimately that kind of dilutes not just in boxing, but just in all aspects, like this whole you know, influencer culture. But I feel personally that you know, eventually, if you don't have any substance behind what you're doing, you will get found out eventually. Even if you do, you know, enjoy some fame and some wealth and success quickly, I find, for instance, you know, there's lots of, since I met you, I've seen lots of freestylers that produce content that does amazing, but I know that they're not the real deal. They don't have the accolades and have put the work in that you have. And, you know, if you were to put them under any kind of pressure, where they're not in a controlled situation, where they're in complete control, they crumble. Whereas I think with someone like you, where you've got your opportunities as well, it's because you've really, you know, you've done it the hard way, so to speak. You've come through the rankings, you've won your tournaments, you've done the hard graft, and now you've well, not just now, but you know how to market yourself as well. It's kind of like that full package, you know. But yeah, I wanted to kind of touch on, you know, you've won your first UK championship. Now you're moving on to the worlds. This is like the next level. How do you find when you took it to that next level? How do you find your mindset changed? How did you approach the world championships as opposed to the UK's, or was there any difference?
Well, after when I won the nationals, I didn't believe that I could win that. Like I didn't, like people say like you've got to believe it to achieve. I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it. I trained harder than anyone, and I won it. Actually, looking back on it, I won it quite comfortably. But at the time, I just thought luck isn't going to go my way. Like I always got unlucky with different sports and different opportunities, and even with the leg break. And there were so many other things that had happened in my childhood with different sports growing up that I just felt like I wasn't destined for any greatness in any of those things, no matter how much I wanted it and how much I trained for it and tried to achieve it. And when I achieved that at 17, it was like, wow, I did it. I broke through, and
Huge boost of confidence.
yeah, and I didn't get like cheated out of it or anything like that. And I was like, wow, like I couldn't believe it. And then that made me just be like, you just got to keep you just got to keep knocking on the door all the time. Keep knocking on doors, like no matter what happens, no matter if you get a bad shake of it, bad run. Like I had so many friends in childhood, and even I bumped into one last time I was down in Cornwall where I grew up. Um, and I remember he was like, "Oh, I've got a dodgy leg," and then he just stopped playing
Mm.
football, and he was really talented. And it's like I'm sure he could have just done some physio, got back to it, but he just threw in the towel
Yeah.
at like a young age. Maybe it was a guidance thing, didn't have the right people around him or whatever. But like, you can always find a way, you know. Like sometimes you can get like terrible things can happen, you know, but a lot of the time people just have an excuse or a cop out to not do something. So I was like, let's just drive and go and go and go. So when I won the UK champs, I was like, right, I can do this. So I'm gonna be the best. And that was my mission. I was just like non-stop driven towards that. So I took everything up a gear. Um, I changed my approach to training. Um, Basically had more hours in,
What
and
does
I
what,
would travel.
I'm sorry to sorry, but what does a day of training look like for a freestyle footballer for yourself? If you're in prep for a world championships, I'm sure people would be interested into what goes into, you know, getting yourself ready for something like that. How does a day or a week of training look like for you?
It's different for everyone because it's an individual sport. So I'm sure it's the same in boxing. You get guys that train just in the evening. You get guys that train in the morning. It's all different. There'll be different things, but for me, I'd wake up, get 2-3 hours training done, have a bit of food, 2-3 hours training done, and then by like lunchtime, I've done like 5-6 hours. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was that was you know I've done more than most people do in a day or even 2 days by lunch. That was how I did it. And I was like, if it's like afternoon and I know that I've crushed anyone else's training, and obviously it's about quality as well.
mm,
So you can't always train the most intense tricks. Probably the body as like maybe 2 hours max of the most intense tricks in a day, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. So all the other time, you know, even the afternoon and evening trainings as well, you got to focus on other things. But there are so many elements that you can build up. For example, like even the basic skills like balancing the ball on top of your head, that will be more about muscle memory, building that up. So
Mm.
you're working on your balance, your muscle memory, focus, all that sort of thing. That's not really like you're not physically getting like absolutely exhausted and moving your legs as fast as you can. So you can focus on the training that move for an hour or 40 minutes or something. Then you can focus on another position, and then you're building them into your skill set. And I always think that when I hear about, now that I'm starting to train boxing with you, and I've been training MMA for a little bit now, I always find that that's an interesting thing when I cross over into that, and I hear how fighters talk or coaches talk, like you should be training 1 or 2 sessions a day, or you
Mm.
should be doing this. I always think like that's not how you're gonna be one of the best, because that isn't how I did it in freestyle. And I've seen freestylers that did that. They do 1 or 2 sessions and that's it. And they're very specific. They train their leg tricks, then they train their head tricks. I always think like in boxing, you could probably, I mean, I'm sure you can train a lot more than me in terms of the really high intense work. But how I'm asking you now, Dan, like how many hours in a day or how long in a day can you be full intensity? I
Well,
mean,
if it really depends. I mean, with boxing, at the peak of my training, I guess we would firstly do 6 days a week.
yeah,
And let's say I have a big fight coming up, you would probably do this for around 8 weeks. And by the end of the 8 weeks, your body is absolutely shattered. You need the rest. So you
yeah,
would start off in the morning. You would probably do around a 90-minute boxing session. So that would be anywhere from 6 rounds of shadow boxing. We'd always do 12 rounds of high intensity punching, potentially 10 rounds of sparring. Um, and then we do our ab work. So that's probably from
yeah,
around 11 till 1, 11 till half 1. We'd go home,
yeah,
and there is where you really need to rest and refuel because, like you said, with that high intensity, your body's starting to feel it. That's 2 hours, let's say, of high intensity. And then it really depends because we would train in the evening as well, like you say, with the 2 sessions. We would do that 4 days a week. And it would be anywhere from like a long 7, 8K run, which you kind of like you're running for roughly around 45 minutes to an hour, and then or else we would do high intensity sprints, which would be a bit shorter on some circuits. So I would
yeah,
say anywhere from like kind of 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours a day of that high intensity stuff. But the thing that I found when you're training at that level of intensity is that you have to knock everything else on the head because you're absolutely shattered. You need to rest. You need to go home in between those training sessions. You need to cook, you need to eat, and you literally just need to sleep because it isn't normal to be working at that level of intensity
yeah,
without the recovery. It's absolutely wrecking your body. So that's what I would say, but it isn't a sustainable way of training. This is just to get yourself in tip-top condition, lose the weight, and also like because it is so intense and it is so grueling, you know, you're preparing yourself mentally to go into a fight, and I'm sure it's the same with freestyle. You're doing all of this work, so when you get in and you fight for 24 minutes, 36 minutes, however long you're fighting for, you have conquered every mental demon that could potentially encounter in a fight. And I feel that that is one of the biggest things with training is not just training the body. I'd say the body is probably 30% of it. You need to be in shape, but training the mind. You really need to go to those dark
yeah.
places and conquer those demons. And I guess that's why you train with that level of intensity. But as I say, it's a temporary thing. You do it for an allotted amount of time because you will absolutely burn out if you train like that all the time.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Like for me, like when I was training, I found like I would gain a lot of progression by almost kind of having like a bit of a yoga like approach to it at times. Like, I'm so tired from doing the full intensity training. My legs are blown out. I'm knackered, but I would stay there, stay in the environment, and I would just work on flow and positions, and I'd evolve my skill set whilst almost having a therapeutic approach to the training. It'd
Yeah.
be like almost like I'm recovering in whilst moving. And I've seen I definitely see that in martial arts and boxing. I mean, if you look at like more dynamic yoga or like yoga for specific sports, it's actually kind of similar to movements that would be used in combat sports, especially not just boxing, but like a lot of leg movements, high leg movements, flexibility and stuff like that. So I feel like you can do those movements and recover
Mm.
as part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
no,
you almost,
entirely, yeah.
yeah. So like with freestyle, I kind of did that approach as well. So I would do the movements in different ways and really try and, for example, like if I'm stalling the ball, which is like where the ball's in one position on a part of your body, if I'm stalling it, I could work on stalling it in different areas, different axes almost, and that really set me apart in terms of my ability to control football, like way more than anyone else in the world, I would say, because I would spend hours and hours just moving around and figuring things out, and it wouldn't be damaging to my body. In fact, it would be the opposite. It would almost give me recovery. There are times, obviously, you need complete rest, and I think that's one of the different things in boxing or MMA is like you are taking damage
Mm.
with strikes, so you need to rest and clear your head and get that recovery, elevate your feet, whatever it is, like you need to do it, jump in an ice bath, whatever it is. And it's the same for me sometimes, but not from like actually taking damage from getting hit. That's different. So I
Yeah.
suppose there are definitely differences, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, the training routine I've just told you was purely just an 8 weeks of training. Now, I've trained under different coaches as amateurs, and professionals, and everyone has a slightly different approach. You have some of the kind of like the old school mentality where you just got to work, you work, 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 so you're never tired. And I've done that, and I've found successes and kind of shortcomings of that. But one of the things that I would second as to what you've said is, sometimes the most enjoyable training sessions and the most beneficial ones are after you've had that long rest and you're just going in and going through the motions. You're just working on things because I think when you're relaxed and you're enjoying your training, you're being more experimental with it. And things are just flowing. And it doesn't matter if you're working at that 100% intensity or you're just working at a pretty relaxed pace. You're working your muscle memory, and your mind is retaining this information on how to move. And I think it's very important for the longevity of someone to, not just go full throttle all the time. I think in a sport like boxing, where it's so paranoid and it's so, success driven, and if you fail, not only do you just instantly drop down the rankings after a loss, but you can potentially, suffer serious damage or even, die in this game. I think lots of people go work off their paranoia and that fear and just 100% intensity and burn out. I think it's great to break it up and relax and do some relaxing training.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. I'd say the ability to adapt, I would say is key. Like with your training, also in the competition. Um, and you see it in guys that when they train, they don't train a lot of the guys, even some of the top guys, they don't have that ability to adapt.
Mm.
And it's because they're just training something specific and they'll do their rounds specifically and they won't have those rounds where they are just floating around, adapting, doing whatever. And then they get in a fight or a freestyle match and something goes wrong or something doesn't work for them and they can't adapt and they're done. And that's I'd say one of the biggest things, especially if you want to be like undefeated. And I
Mm.
feel like that's such a even more important thing. It must be more important in combat sports because if you break your hand,
Mm.
that's it. You got to adapt. What are you going to do? Throw in the towel? No, like you're going to adapt. Like Mayweather, he's broken his hand loads of times. Seen a video of him pop up the other day, and it was like you were saying, like you bust your hand, you might have to work on the other hand. But knowing that, like, if you're not training for that to potentially arise, then it might happen, and then you're not prepared for it, right? So you got to be prepared for everything.
You got to be prepared for everything. And you bring up Floyd Mayweather, and he was, he's a defensive genius, a brilliant attacking fighter in his younger days. But for me, the best thing about Floyd was his ability to adapt. Like
Yeah.
that the mind that guy had in the ring was just phenomenal. You will look at some of his fights where he just didn't need to adapt. You know, he just was in complete control. But he had a few instances like the fight against Zab Judah where he was, you know, Zab was working him out early on. And, you know, Shane Mosley, for instance, as well, where he got clocked early on. You know, like that ability to compute information and sense the danger and just so quickly be able to, you know, develop a completely different style, whether it's starting to walk your opponent down or walk on the back foot, is what made him such a great fighter. And that would have, just like you say, come from all those hours in the gym, you know, just the dedication and sacrifice to the craft. It's Tyson Fury as well. You look at another fighter, you just never know what you're going to get with that guy. The ability to adapt makes you such a difficult proposition to face in the ring, but in any sport.
That's it. That's it.
I wanted to move on ever so slightly in regards to last question about football and your freestyling career. You have worked with some of the biggest names, not only in football but just in the world. I mean, the resume of people you've worked alongside is just practically ridiculous. I know you're a level-headed guy and it doesn't really get to you, and you have a great approach to it, which I think is fantastic and is one of the reasons you've been able to remain grounded. But you've worked alongside the likes of Ronaldinho, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar. You know, I mean, I could be here all day just naming names. I want to know, and I'm sure lots of people who, you know, are obsessed with these guys, what's it like, for instance, let's say Ronaldo, because I know you've done quite a few bits with Ronaldo. What's it like on set with Ronaldo doing a day with him? Because I know also he's into fighting as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He is. Yeah, it's always good. The first time I met Ronaldo we did like 12 commercials, and they were small commercials, like for social media. So they're all small ones. And it was cool, man. Like, I didn't know what to expect, because you hear a lot of people saying he's arrogant, or, you know, like that sort of thing. But I just treat everyone like I don't, I just take them on what I see myself and how I get to know them. And yeah, he was so cool, man. Like, straight away, just like up for doing everything. I came up with a choreography for all the different commercials that we were doing, and he just took to it straight away. I'm like, so for example, one of them, he's lying in the bed, a ball pops out from like his alarm clock and up in the air. That's his like alarm to wake up in the morning. He controls the ball sitting on the side of the bed, like juggling it, left foot, right foot. He goes out, does a few tricks, does some push-ups, kicks it against the wall as his curtains open and his door opens onto the balcony, and the ball goes into a goal that's on the balcony. And I thought, oh, he's probably not going to want to do this. He might not want to do that. He's just down for doing everything. And it was the same the whole way through all the 12 commercials, down for doing everything. There was one as well where like he had to kick drones out of the sky. And it's a pretty fun challenge, but this is a guy that's training and he's playing at the highest level. The same week he's playing and training, and then he's got to rest, he's got to eat well, recover, he's got family. Like, to do commercials and things like this extra, he doesn't need the money, but you know, he's getting the money as well, obviously, but he's doing a lot. And he was just there. He had to kick it over a little it was like a little like water, like river flowing through the side of the place we were shooting at. The balls would go in there. He'd jump in and get the balls, and he'd take a net and help and there was people that were paid to just be on site with a net to fish the balls out so he could try and kick the drum. And he's jumping in, helping them. He's picking up the net and helping them. Like, he's a real down-to-earth guy. And I can see why he's so goddamn good, because his mind is into everything that he does. Like, when he's focused on it, he wants to get as good results as he can on it. So I can see that's why he's successful. Even as a businessman, he's very successful. Like, people would think that it's easy because, you know, being the best or one of the best football players ever, you'd think the business side would come easy, but you also have to be really smart with that. And I know him and his team have done a really good job. So very cool to meet him, work with him, and just to get to know him on a personal level as well was very cool. Like away from cameras, walking around, chatting, and yeah, we both have the same passion as well in martial arts, and he likes watching it more than doing it, you know. But he definitely likes MMA, and we talked a bit about that. And he likes freestyle as well. He was very interested in knowing about how the competitions worked. And I was actually the first time I met him, I was training for my fifth world championship, and yeah, he congratulated me the day I won, and that sort of thing was very nice. So yeah, he's just a humble guy, nice down to earth guy, which he doesn't always seem on camera. So yeah, very cool to meet him, and now he's over in Saudi, right? So maybe
Yeah.
I'll go out there, some skills with him and his son as well at some point. We'll see.
Yeah, because his son is on the way up as well. I'm sure that opportunity would come up. Um, Now I want to get into your fighting. So for those of you that know you as a football freestyler, you have entered the world of mixed martial arts. You've had two fights. You've won them both in the first round. I was lucky enough to see one of those fights. And there's also opportunities for you to get into the world of boxing. I mean, like you say, you've amassed a huge following. You've got, I believe, over 5 million followers across your social media platforms. And you know, the YouTube boxing scene right now is a huge opportunity to jump on. And just tell me a little bit about your interest in fighting. Where does that stem from?
Yeah, so I first got interested in martial arts at a young age, watching I used to watch like lots of martial arts programs on TV, and from Jackie Chan to like martial law to watching Bloodsport, like with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I don't know, yeah, all sorts of films like that. I was really into it. My father did judo to a high level as well, so definitely inspired me to try some martial arts. And I was actually a very small kid growing up. I was one of the smallest kids in my year, and I was really fast, but I was small, so I got picked on a bit. And I think just know like wanting to be able to defend myself and that sort of thing became a big thing. When I played rugby, I went from like something clicked, and after many years of playing and just being the guy that caught the ball and ran through everyone, scored tries, and I was the kicker as well. But I wasn't a very good tackler, to being like all of a sudden I went from not being able to tackle anyone to just being able to demolish everyone, and I would just pick guys up. And I think it might have been the my like playing around with my dad doing judo and stuff like that. I think something might have just connected everything, and I developed a bit more physically as well. I grew, and I just started picking up big guys and dump tackling them. This is when dump tackling was legal in rugby, and I think I just really enjoyed the contact side of things. So that also, I know it's not martial arts, but it made me want to do more martial arts. You know, like I loved the 1v1 competitions always on the playground. Even my friends now, they always remind me of it. Like, we knew you were gonna do MMA because we used to always, like, when we're on the playground, we'd always have like mini fights or, you know, things like that. And I would always like be like the king of the ring or whatever, and or king of the hill, like throwing everyone down. So like, even though I was a small guy, because I was strong and fast, I could pick up the big guys and get them. So I took to martial arts pretty naturally, I would say. More, it came to me much more naturally than freestyle did. That's for sure. I actually think it suits me more than freestyle in a way, which is quite funny
Quite a
because
frightening
I
thought,
became the
really.
best in the world at freestyle.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's quite
Huh?
a frightening thought, really, if you if that's how you feel after everything you've done in
Yeah.
freestyle.
Yeah, but you know, it's like fighting's crazy, man, and there's some savages out there, and you know, it's a crazy sport. I'm not saying I could achieve those heights with it, but I just naturally at the start anyway
Mm.
took better to it, and so I started training when I moved to London, and yeah, a few years ago, like after I wrapped up in freestyle, when I achieved all my goals in the sport, winning 5 world titles. I was like, do you know what? Now it's time for me to start doing MMA and start training that and build up and start competing, because it's something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to fight. And now there's this social media thing going on where influencers are boxing and fighting and that sort of thing. So I started training for a few of those things, and yeah, had myself a few fights and been in a few other competitions as well.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and I genuinely do think that you are well suited to fighting. Not obviously because of the physical side of things. Of course, you know from the background in the martial arts and the rugby, you are physically strong. But I look at it more as a mental approach when I'm coaching fighters or when I'm analysing fighters. And one thing I've seen that kind of separates you from pretty much anyone else I've ever trained alongside or with, other than the exception of someone like a Michael Conlan, who's at that very top level. It's just your mental approach to the game. Like, you know, when I would get into fights, like, you know, I would kind of look at it in a sense, whereas like I would just want a free flow. I don't really want the game plan. I just want to make myself well-rounded and just see what happens in the fight. Just take that pressure off myself. But I found with you, like, the difference between you and just your normal life and when there is a scheduled fight is just, it's like a different person. And I mean that in the sense where it's like you've become so switched on and kind of obsessed with the intricate details. And maybe that's from your years of freestyle, but you will, you know, sometimes when we're training in the gym, you would just come up to me and be like, I think this is going to work in the first round. And you would, you know, you would explain to me how stuff is going to go down. And, you know, after seeing you fight and seeing you go out and absolutely just smash a guy in the first round, I think that is going to give you a lot of success moving forward in the sport, you know. And just the fact that you do train hard, you know, there'll be lots of guys, especially coming from the influencer scene, that don't want to do like the last 2 rounds, whereas it's like you want to do 2 more extra rounds just to get the details on the hook. Tell me about your mindset and your approach in that regards, because I find it fascinating.
No, I appreciate that. And I would say, like, yeah, I definitely am I have that problem, and it's a good problem to have in sports, but I do get obsessed with things like that. And I'm so, like, I don't know if it's stubborn, if that's the right word, but I if I see something, I think I can do it. So any technique, if you show me any single technique on a bag or anything, I think, why the hell can't I do it? Like, I've got 2 arms, I can move my body well, like, I'm fast, I'm strong. Why can't I do that technique as well? So I'm like, well, I need to get that. I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to add that to my game. And then if someone, like, the other day I sparred a guy and he just whooped me, completely whooped me.
It happens.
And yeah, and afterwards I'm like, I need to figure out how to beat this guy. Like, why am I not? And I know really why I'm not beating this guy, because he's been doing it forever and he trains with very high level guys. He's bigger, he's longer, he's got everything on me. But I still have a problem with it. I can't accept it. You know, I can't accept it. If I moved around with anyone, I can't accept it. Like, I just, something about me, like, I just can't. So I got to figure out a way. And I always just think, like, there's so many ways to win in these sports, especially in MMA, more so even than in boxing, but in boxing too, than MMA. There's so many ways to win. Like, I just think it's very possible for someone to have never done MMA before and be the best in the world in 2 years. I think it's so possible, because not to be the best
Yeah.
necessarily, but win a world
Be of a
title.
good level. You can't buy that experience, but you can be of a good level, especially if you're devoting that time to it. There's just certain things you can't overcome against someone with experience, but you can learn from your own experiences doing that. Do you know what I mean?
In boxing, more so. In boxing, it takes a lot longer, because boxing it's a sport. It's a skill thing. It's not fighting.
It's a
There's
it's a
it's
specific set of skills. Like
Yeah, it's very different. But in MMA, it's fighting, and there's so many variables that no one has it all covered. There's not a single fighter that has every part covered.
yeah.
So they're all beatable. Every fighter is beatable. And you see it all the time in MMA. You get a guy like Ben Askren, for example. I know he's a bit of a, like, people joke about him now because he lost to Jake Paul in boxing, but he demolished it. He was the best in the world in the one championship. He was a world champion, undefeated guy, smashing everyone with his wrestling. And then he gets knocked out in like 3 or 4 seconds by Masvidal with a crazy flying knee. Right, that just showed a big hole in his game, and he was he was this crazy top level guy beating some amazing fighters. And you see it all the time with other fighters. They look like they're impossible to beat. They're so elite. And then someone makes them look silly. Like Conor, when he went against Khabib, it's like, wow, he just shut down his game. And there's such a broad range of it. And I just think, like, yeah, that's something that I look at as well. Like, why can't I figure out ways to get into this? You have to build up your fundamentals, your foundations. Why can't I figure out a way to beat these guys? You know, that's my mindset. So that's why I'm so obsessed.
It's a great
And
mindset to have, and I think that's that drive and that determination you have and that will to win. But the thing that separates you from others that would have that, other people would be like, oh, what the fuck, why can't I get this guy? And they would flip out and they would be angry. But you will think about it and be like, right, how can I get this guy? And then you will go and work at it. So you've had 2 fights. One in the is it the Utilita arena? It's a pretty big arena.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Yeah. Can't remember how many people were there. I think it was like 7,000, something like that, watching.
Yeah.
So for a first MMA fight, it was pretty spectacular.
No pressure whatsoever. I mean, what's that like? Because I've boxed in sports halls as an amateur where I've just absolutely been cacking it before. You're just like, oh my God, this is the worst feeling ever. Like there's like 10 people there, and to go out in front of 7,000 people to do something that, although you have trained it, you've never done it in that environment before, and then you go out and smash a guy in 1 minute or in one round, let's say. What was the experience in the build up like? How did you feel in the dressing room? How did you feel when you were walking out to the ring? And then, obviously you went out and done what you said you'd do. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was all new to me, and when I was in the back, a part of it though was like familiar, like the sort of fighters meeting before with the referee and everyone around, where they explain the rules and all that stuff. Like that was so familiar with me because that happens before every freestyle event. You're all in the back, and it's like shit's about to get real, sort of thing. So, all right, cool. I'm used to that. But then the nerves kicked in. I was like, damn, everyone could see me. The worst case scenario. This always kicks in the back for me for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, where I just feel terrible. I feel the worst I can feel. I'm like, damn, like I could get knocked out here bad in front of all my friends, my family. Like I could be exposed for not having skills. Like, what if nothing works? What if this guy's way better than, like all the negative things come in. And then I get comfortable with that, and I start thinking, well, everyone in my family love me no matter what happens to me, and everyone that's important to me in my life will stay with me no matter what. And the people that wouldn't stay with me based on a negative result in that area aren't worth my time anyway. So I start feeling good, and then I just start feeling liberated, and I feel free. Like I just go out, and it doesn't matter because I'm fighting, and I'll change the destiny, and I'll make it happen no matter what. And I always tell myself before, and I was the same in freestyle, and it's a bit funny saying it in freestyle, but with the fighting, I say it like, doesn't matter what I get hit with, doesn't matter what happens, I won't give up. I won't keep pushing forward. I won't keep moving. I will keep moving forward, no matter what happens. So you break my face, you bust a limb, crack something. It doesn't matter if one of my legs is fucked. I don't care. I keep going. I'll keep going. That's yeah, that's something I promised myself. So when I go in, I know that it doesn't matter what happens. I'll keep going. And I don't know. I haven't really been tested yet. In my last fight, I broke my foot. I broke my foot in the last fight in the first 3 seconds. I kicked the guy's kneecap,
Which
broke
start?
the top of my foot, and yeah, I was like, shit. Better take him down. So I took him down, finished him, and I know a lot of people would have, especially that early on in their fighting career, would have found a way out there or would have stopped. And and quit, or kind of covered up and took the beating or whatever. But for me, it just made me put my foot on the gas more, you know.
And it's the
And
art of adapting, like we spoke about earlier. You can't predetermine breaking your foot in the first 3 seconds. I mean, I was at that fight, and we had been training a lot of striking, a lot of boxing, and you just went down and just took the guy down straight away. At first, I hadn't realised you'd broken the foot, but you were so capable of doing that, and within like a couple of minutes, you had won. And then when you stood up, and even from the top tier where I was looking, I could see the yellow ball on your foot. So I thought, that's why that's why it's gone the way it has. And that's you say you haven't been tested, but lots of people would have crumbled in that situation, especially in just their second fight. So that's all credit to you.
thanks. And I experienced different things like that in freestyle before. Sometimes it's different, but sometimes you drop the ball off the stage,
Mm,
and then when you try a trick, and then you have to go for the hardest tricks possible.
mm,
You're either going to fail them or you land them, and if you land them, maybe you'll win. But if you don't, you will never you won't have a chance anyway. But you might lose by less. And I've seen it even with some of the top guys. They're okay settling with a loss by decision when they know they're going to lose 2 3 minutes before that. And that
mm.
isn't me. Like I'll go and I'll go out, fighting. So that's my attitude, and try and find a way until it's over. So yeah, in the back I get nervous, real nervous for a few minutes, and then I feel free, and then just before the fight starts, I start dancing around. I'm crazy. I start going crazy. I'm like singing. I'm like completely out of character, like the most hype you'll ever see me. And then I go into the cage and I'm like fierce, and I'm just like excited to start. I can't wait for the bell to start. I look at my opponent and I just can't wait to go. I'm in the cage and I see them and I'm just like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. And I'm so excited. I'm excited to get hit and hurt as well. I don't care. I'm up for it. And I think that's one thing I'll bring to this YouTube boxing world as well. Like they I've seen some, like they're the tough guys in the scene, but when I'm brought in there, I feel like it'll be a different level. Like I'll laugh at them when they hit me hard, and I'll be down for a scrap no matter what. But I'll also try and be smart in there.
Yeah, yeah, of
That's the
course.
thing. I feel like I can do bits in there, but I want to get technical. That's what I want to do. I want to be technically better than the guys as well.
I'm sure you will if you keep training the way you're going. I mean, it is funny hearing you talk about the dancing in the changing room before a fight. I mean, I'm a pretty tame guy. I'm not the most out there. I'm not the most in your face. I prefer to keep myself to myself. But if you come into my changing room before a fight, I'm an absolute freak. Like I'm going like whoo, 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 and then I like just looking in the mirror, like punching myself, getting myself ready. It's a crazy experience that I just cannot. You can't explain until you do it. You have the butterflies in your belly, like you say, the negative thoughts in your head, the dry mouth. You just everything feels heavy when you're prepping for a fight when you're in the changing room. It's crazy, and I mean you've
Because you're faced
experienced.
with yourself. You're faced with yourself. You're not thinking about other people's perception of you in that moment. You're thinking, oh crap, this is about to get real. Because when we're in that ring or cage or whatever it is, it's me and him. There's
Mm,
no one else. No one else is interfering. It's just me and him. So I need to get where I need to be. And you figure out what gets you there when before you're in that environment, when you're gearing up for it. And there's nothing like when it becomes real. It's hard to prepare to be like that when it's not the case, like weeks before. When you're, we minutes away or an hour away from the fight, and you start knowing that there's no turning back,
mm.
and your hands have been wrapped and they're sealed. You're like, okay, I got to get where I need to be so that
Uh,
I do the job here, and that's a crazy feeling. That's one of the best feelings, one of the best
yeah,
feelings in the world.
it's crazy. I mean, it's kind of like that in a sense. You're dreading it because it's coming closer, but you're also looking forward to it the closer the fight gets. Because I always used to think in an hour this will be over. But I'd like to move on to my last question because I won't keep you for any longer. Um, where do you
Got
find?
boxing training in a bit, Dan, haven't we?
Yeah,
So
I'll see you in an hour and a half, but
yeah.
this isn't going to be released today. Uh, where do you see your fighting career taking you? Now you've had your two MMA fights, you have these huge opportunities in the boxing world. You're in your 30s now. I mean, how old are you exactly?
I'm
40.
31. I'm no spring chicken anymore, mate. What did you say?
I didn't say that. Right. In regards to 30, but 31's a pretty good age. Where do you see yourself going across the next few years? I mean, you have experience in the fighting now. I think you're going to come on pretty quickly in the YouTube boxing scene, so to speak, because I think there's competition definitely there for the taking for you. Where do you see yourself, and what are your goals?
I would like to, yeah, I'd like to do this Misfits thing, YouTube boxing or Kingpin or one of them. But to be honest, I have my concerns with it because I feel like once I go against one guy and I just detonate a bomb in his face, I feel like they won't want me part of the show. I feel like I won't fit in. There's a lot of clowns in there. There's some good guys in there too, but it's a mixed bag. And it was the reason I say this is, Dan, there was this time last year there was a celebrity mixed martial arts
Mm,
show, and they wanted me on it, and I was signed up to do it. I did 10-week training camp, and I went against the guy. They put me against a heavyweight. I'm a welterweight.
mm,
They put me against him, matched me up. I agreed it. The guy was on juice. The guy was friends with the organizers. The whole shit show was corrupt. And I still agreed to everything. And like it became apparent to them what would have happened to their star boy in the main event because he pulled out last minute and they created some excuses and all that. So I did all that hard training to not get that opportunity. And that's the nature of this game. People pull out all the time and stuff like that, but I show up to fight. So hopefully Mams Taylor, if he does give me that opportunity, I'll show him that I'll fight no matter what. I'm not pulling out when I sign up for things. And I'll be fighting and I'll put on a show. That's one thing I can promise is exciting fights. Like I'll definitely be exciting. When I fight, I'm very energetic, very explosive. So I think it'll be good. And I think if I do get into one of those things, I think I'll do well. I would like to fight in MMA as well. And that's the other thing I'm thinking about is like there's organizations like Bellator, Cage Warriors, some of the other ones, and I'd like to see how well I could do in that
mm.
space.
You've
Really
got
test myself.
to your bow, man. I mean, you have multiple opportunities as well, which is a great thing. And you touch upon that fight falling through. It goes back to what we said earlier about guys wanting to have that quick, easy step. I'm not. This could be an instance they want that quick, easy step and that quick gratification, but it goes to show if the substance isn't behind it, it will show through. Is one of the reasons you will get quite a lot of pullouts in this Misfits card, I would have presumed. But I mean, man, welcome to boxing. Welcome to fighting. This is just the nature of the beast. You're going to get pullouts quite a lot, and it is what it is. But if you stay true to yourself and you go through with these opportunities, I'm certain you're going to provide a lot of excitement. And man, I look forward to it. I think you're going to bring a lot to the boxing scene and the MMA scene over the next couple of years.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's weird because you got like you got like lots of guys that they do step into it late in life and they do well because like I'm maybe 31, which might seem old in sport, but I'm young in boxing or I'm young in martial arts in a way. Like I feel like my body pretty well, even though I've trained hard and there's a lot of miles on the clock, from the train I've done in freestyle. I've looked after myself well. I haven't taken damage to my head like you said, like in both my fights, I haven't, no one's landed a single strike on me. I rarely get hit hard in sparring and hurt. So um, I've protected myself pretty well. So I feel like I'm still quite young in the game as well. Um, I'm not like a 18-year-old, but I still feel that I've got quite a few years where I can be progressing at a fast level. So I look forward to it, and
Yeah.
I get to capitalize on it as well, because I know that when you're 20, you think you're going to be youthful forever. And I
Mm.
know that that's not the case now. I have to look after myself to stay in good shape. When I was in my mid 20s or early 20s, I'd be ripped. I could eat anything. I could drink anything I wanted, eat anything. I'd be absolutely shredded. No doubt about it. I could go on holiday for a month and I'd be shredded still. Now, you let it slip for a
That'll be
week
that.
and you're not. So it's different. It's different.
Well, like I say, I also think the main key to your success will be your mindset, and that's the one thing. Obviously, you have that athletic background, and like you say, you haven't got the wear and tear, but the mindset. But listen, I'm going to leave it there. I want to ask you one last thing. I just want to know who your favorite boxers are. Obviously, this is a boxing pod. I want to know your favorite
Yeah.
boxers and your favorite fight. And then your favorite fight can be anywhere from the boxing, the MMA. If you have a boxing fight specifically that some of the listeners might know, that's fine, but no stress. But your favorite boxer and your favorite fight in MMA or boxing.
Favorite boxers.
You
Ooh,
can pick me if you want. You don't have to, but
yeah, well, it just goes without saying, mate.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so favorite boxers ever. Um, who do I like? Lomachenko definitely is in there.
Phenomenal
Um,
fight.
definitely one of my favorite guys that I've watched. I haven't seen like all of his fights, but I like Roberto Duran. Uh, yeah.
Let's talk about Lomachenko, man. Just very briefly. I mean, what like that guy is just. Whew, like I've seen lots of people criticizing Lomachenko for taking the losses, but like I mean, you will know because you are getting into the world of fighting now, but also like you just know how difficult it is to move in a specific way. That guy moves like no one else I've ever seen, at a rate, a speed in which no one else has ever seen under that kind of pressure.
It's what we were talking about as well. Like it's different. There are even in boxing, there is different ways to do it. And like seeing videos of him doing their dancing in Ukraine and like all that stuff that they were doing and developing the footwork and him and Usyk doing that. And it's like that's different, right? You're not seeing AJ dancing like that around, and their footwork's different, and things work for different people, and they get brought up in different ways and adapted to their style. But yeah, the way he moves, man, the way he can just be behind someone, he's touching them, boom, 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 switches, he's right in front of them, just tapping them, tapping them, tapping them. It made me have more of appreciation for speed, and angles.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, the
speed
angles are
and
just otherworldly. Yeah, I mean, he's what lots of the younger kids that are potentially criticizing or seeing Lomachenko now that he has lost to Teofimo Lopez, but what they don't know is just how much he influenced the boxing scene when he came about. I mean, I knew of him throughout his amateur career because I follow boxing like a complete and utter nerd. But like
yeah.
when he stepped onto like the world scene and people started seeing the viral videos, he was
Yeah.
putting off these tricks that just no one had seen consistently to that level, like swiping the gloves and the angles and like what he's been able to do and inspire so many people to try and develop that kind of style is just such a credit, man.
I think nowadays it absolutely is. I think nowadays everyone wants everything quick. That's the way of the world. Everyone wants to be a pro. They want to be successful. They want to make money. But you look back to like Lomachenko, it's like he had so many amateur fights. He competed in multiple Olympics, and he did so well in them. And it was like almost kind of like you watch it now. If you watch his journey and you
Oh
watch
yeah.
a load of those fights, you watch the Olympics that he competed in, you think, why is he competing in another Olympics 4 years later and he hasn't turned pro? Like, why is he doing that? And it also like that's the change of the times, but it shows why he's so good, why he's so amazing, why he's inspired so many people, because he's still experimenting, he's still growing, he's still evolving his skills. Whereas he's not like honing them in, like, I'm a pro now, I need to start cracking guys. It's like, actually, no, I'm evolving my game as a boxer first and foremost, not being a money-making machine or trying to be like something that the world perceives as the best. And that's why he's one of my favorite as well. Mayweather as well, just because I used to think, when I didn't know much about boxing, I still don't know that much about boxing, especially compared to yourself, but Mayweather was someone that I would watch and think he's a bit boring initially. But the more I'm getting into boxing, the more I can watch him and think, damn, he's one of the most amazing boxers to watch. Just the way he can. It's like he has something inside him where he can analyze your energy levels. He can take it from you, and he knows that by the 8th round, 9th round, you're going to not be the same. And to be able to have that much confidence in what he does and to pull it off every single time is amazing. No one's like that, and he's a very special fighter, very, very special.
He's truly phenomenal. I mean, whether you like him or not, or what he's done or his style, you can only appreciate the greatness. I mean, there's a great video that Andre Berto, who boxed him in his 49th professional fight, which is really his last professional fight. He did box Conor McGregor, but Andre Berto's describing what it's like to be in the ring with him, and just, the way he's so aware, like that you even have some instances where he will be in the zone and then some guy in the second row says something and he just looks and talks to him, like he's just so aware of everything that's going on, so comfortable. He is a truly fascinating fighter. But listen, I'm going to leave it there, Andrew. I really appreciate you coming on and spending the time talking to me, and I'm sure people will be really interested to hear your stories and that you've done and moving forward into the fighting world. And I really appreciate it, man. I'll probably see you in about an hour and a half because we're going to do a little bit of training now. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Pleasure, man. Anytime. And I'm going to stay tuned for the rest of the podcast. Can't wait to see you progress in this journey like you are doing with so many things. So let's go.
Thank you, man. And make sure you follow Andrew on the social media channels. It's at Andrew Henderson.